Hello and welcome to part 4 of our video series, the introduction to GNS3, a quick and dirty version. Now in this video we're going to continue to configure the GNS3 virtual machine. We've already completed the first boot and we're getting ready to log into the shell of GNS3. So without further ado, we'll dig right in. Again, thanks for joining. And we're going to select the option to open a shell. Now before we proceed, I'd like to call out a couple of things and bring them to your attention. First is the GNS3 virtual machine runs on Ubuntu 18.04. The latest version does, and it no longer uses Network Manager by default. Additionally, it no longer uses the single network interfaces file. So interfaces.config is no longer used. What Ubuntu 18.04 uses is it uses NetPlan as the back end interfaces configuration tool, and NetPlan uses YAML config files. So what happens is you configure the YAML file, and NetPlan then processes that and loads it into the underlying network stack, and your configuration is applied in that fashion. To modify or to customize the GNS3 virtual machine's network settings, we're going to be using a mix of the standard DHCP and static addressing configuration. And if you scroll down to the bottom, we're going to use the NetPlan source routing config snippet. The last part that I want to bring to your attention is the SSH client. So there are so many. Most of us are familiar with PuTTY. PuTTY's been around forever, and you can use that. It's compatible with GNS3. There's also, and I'm calling this one out because it's probably the most common. Windows has its own Telnet and SSH client that's built into the most recent versions of Windows 10, and that works as well. We'll demonstrate that one toward the end of this particular video. And finally, the one that I use is Secure CRT. I didn't bring that up here because it's not a free open source SSH client. It costs, so you've got to pay for that. Okay, so now that we've got that part out of the way, we're back to our GNS3 virtual machine. We're at the command line, and we're ready to establish our SSH session. The first thing you want to do is you want to determine which IP address you're going to establish your SSH session on. So you want to issue the IP, the ifconfig command to display all of the interfaces. There are various ways to do it. I choose to do the ifconfig command. So fire that up and open up your SSH client of choice and follow along from here. Okay, so you may have seen that error that popped up when I went to apply the YAML config, and what that means is in your in my YAML config, there are tabs at the beginning of the line. NetPlan is very, very, very specific where it comes to indents and tabs. There can be no tabs at the beginning of a line, and the indents must all line up. Okay, so as soon as you apply the changes you've made to your NetPlan configuration for your network stack, you're going to lose connectivity to the GNS3 virtual machine. And that's fine. Just reestablish your SSH session using one of the static IPs you've assigned via your new network stack. Once you get connected, the first thing you want to do is do an ifconfig, right, to display, or whatever command you use to display your network stack configuration. You want to validate basically that your IP address that you've assigned in your YAML config is what you see in the output. Okay, and that's what we're going to do in this step here. So just wanted to call that out. So as you can see, the Windows built-in SSH client works through the command prompt. And with that, we'll bring part 4 to a close. And in the next video, which will be the part 5 and the final video, we'll go through the installation process for the GNS3 client, as well as configuring the client with the base config, and also onboarding your first appliance into GNS3. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.